I'm attorney Gloria Allred. I represent Vivian Diego. I'm going to read my statement, and then Vivian will read her statement. On May 31st, 2013, Vivian Diego, a transgender woman, was violently attacked from behind by either 3 or 4 men as she was walking away from them at Hollywood and Vine in Hollywood, California. This attack was recorded on videotape by a nearby business and was played in court today and also at a preliminary hearing in this case after the men seen in the video were apprehended. As a result of the attack, Vivian suffered great bodily injury and had to be hospitalized and have surgery. Vivian described her serious injuries in court today and will do so again right now. All that Vivian remembers of the incident in question is that one of the men stated to her, quote, "You fag, take that off. You look stupid," end quote. After that, she woke up in the hospital in intensive care. A witness working construction nearby told police that he saw men kicking a female on the ground and that he saw these men kicking mostly her head and her body as well, saying, "Effing bitch." As though being victimized in a brutal attack was not enough, Vivian then had to undergo humiliation and disrespect of her in court as well. Attorney Mark Garagos, during a preliminary hearing in which he was defending one of the defendants in this case, Samuel Garantz, referred to Vivian as a, quote, "it," end quote. Deputy DA Brookins objected, and on page 56, line 22 of the transcript, she stated, quote, "I'm going to object that he referred to him as, quote, "it," end quote. In addition, Mr. Garagos also referred on the record to Vivian as a, quote, "freak," end quote. On page 108, line 12, he stated, quote, "I'm not going to touch this freak," end quote. And there was a little bit more, but that's the relevant issue. Then when the court stated in response at page 108, line 14 and 15, quote, "Let's not refer to someone as freak, counsel," Mr. Garagos responded at page 108, line 16, quote, "This is a freak," end quote. And later at page 108, line 22 and 23, Mr. Garagos states, quote, "And you're telling me that I can't call that person a freak," end quote. No victim, but especially not an individual who is transgender and who, as part of the crime against her, has already been disrespected by being called a fag and an effing bitch, should have to hear an attorney in the criminal case in which she was a victim being labeled by an attorney in the case as a freak. This is disgraceful conduct by a member of the bar and very hurtful to Vivian and to many others who are transgender as well. In addition, it violates Marsy's Law, which is Article 1, Section 28 of our California Constitution, which guarantees fairness and guarantees respect for crime victims in the criminal justice process. To make matters worse, Mr. Garagos' client was allowed to plead to a misdemeanor without any consultation prior to the entry of the plea with Vivian or with me. His sentence was to work on Caltrans for 20 days. To further compound the emotional injury to Vivian, the defendant in this case today, who was just sentenced, Mr. Shakhnazarian, who is represented by a different attorney and a different firm, has pled to a felony, Penal Code Section 245A4, with the ability to earn a misdemeanor. Given the very serious and violent crime inflicted on Vivian and the injuries inflicted on her during the course of the crime, I believe the only sentence that would have been appropriate would have been the maximum sentence permitted under the law, which would be 2, 3, or 4 years in state prison. I've read cases of animal cruelty where defendants were sentenced to state prison for crimes that inflicted great bodily injury on animals. Why are the defendants who inflicted serious harm on Vivian Diego, a transgender human being, not deserving of the most serious punishment for the life-changing injuries that they inflicted on her and which caused her to be placed in intensive care and then have to undergo major surgery? This case has been going on for about 5 years. Vivian has made numerous court appearances, and she bravely testified at the trial. All she sought was justice, and in many ways that has been denied to her. Individuals who are transgender deserve justice, and they deserve respect and dignity. We look forward to the day when they will finally be afforded those basic rights in a court of law. And before I introduce Vivian, I just want to say, so we also have handed out the transcript, and this is the transcript, which is the transcript in which Mr. Garagos made the statements on the record in the court to calling Vivian a freak and it. It's just shameful. And now I present Vivian, who's been very, very brave through all of this. As I say, she's made many court appearances. She had the courage to testify at trial. She didn't have any car. She had to take buses and other public transportation to get all the way to this courthouse for so many appearances. But she's persevered, and I'm very proud of her. Vivian.
Hello, I'm Vivian, and I would like to start off today by thanking the courts for allowing me to be here today to give this statement on the matter. I can.
Just do the best you can, and I'll help you if you can.
For allowing me to be here today on a statement of this matter. I would also like to thank the whole district attorney's office for helping me seek justice. In that night of the beating, that night I was beaten by 4 men and and left for dead. I woke up at Cedars-Sinai Hospital in the intensive care unit. From thinking I was having a bad nightmare to understanding that this was my reality. Never in a million years would I have thought that I would be attacked and victimized in the way that I was, and that defendants would have shattered my face, knocked my jaw to the back of my throat, and caused me to lose the hearing in my left ear. They shattered my jaw, fractured both my eye sockets, and broke my cheekbone, fractured my temple, and broke my ribs. The temple fracture was the result of my hearing in my left ear.
We don't want to stop. We want to stop you just a second. Your mic, your hand, and the paper's hitting the mic.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. We just want to be able to hear you.
Yeah, you're okay. So just stand back here. That's okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
The fracture of my temple and broke my ribs. The temple fracture was the result of my hearing loss, which will always be a constant reminder of what I survived. I was in intensive care for 2 days. When I woke up from surgery, my jaw was wired shut. I was moved to critical care where I stayed for another 16 days. It was awful. I wouldn't wish the pain I went through on my worst enemy. The severity of the physical healing process took 2 months, but the mental and emotion healing part of it is ongoing. I'm starting to get choked up here.
It's okay. You can have emotion. You've earned it. It's okay.
Right here. Most of all, I am very thankful to still be alive. I suffer great anxiety, not only from being brutally victimized, but also for being called an it and a freak by Mark Garagos. At one of the court hearings, I have permanent plate in my jaw area. I feel that the men that attacked me got off way too easy and that justice was not properly served. One of the assaulters got off with a plea bargain of 1 year probation and no jail time. The second man, who sits here today, has pled guilty to a felony and settled out of court with the ability to earn a misdemeanor after performing community service. The nurse in ICU told me that whoever did this to me was trying to kill me, that this feels like a very light punishment for the men who had intended to kill me. I believe both of these men should serve prison time for what they did to me. Anyone who indeed intends to inflict great bodily injury on another person does inflict great bodily harm should serve a maximum prison time that comes with that charge. Honestly, my anxiety is way overwhelming that just being outside sometimes is too much. I can't be around big crowds. I can't walk alone sometimes. It's just too much. And I lost my hearing from my left ear. My jaw will never be normal. Just knowing I have these injuries permanently affects me emotionally. I have to watch what I do on a daily so that I don't worsen my injuries. These injuries will be with me for life. I am afraid to ever go out to Hollywood again. That's a no. At one point, it was one of my favorite places to be. And I worked in Hollywood for 5 years. Even though I suffer so much from what happened to me, I'm still very thankful that I'm able to be here today to tell my story. I want to let people know that being trans does not mean our lives are disposable. At the end of the day, we are still human, and we love and bleed the same way, and we all have feelings as well. Thank you.
Okay, we'll be happy to take some questions. And we do have photos as well. You have some questions?
Gloria, what's the most frustrating thing about this case for your client, but for you as well, and representing her?
I do feel that her rights were trampled upon as a victim, and I have indicated that to District Attorney Jackie Lacey, and she's invited me to meet with some of her top staff, because I don't think any victim, transgender or anyone else, should be treated the way she was treated or mistreated. There were numerous district attorneys, deputy district attorneys, that were assigned to this case and rotated through this case. Numerous continuances. Her rights violated because they were aware that she had an attorney. I was in constant communication with them. And for example, at one point, I was told she just needed to come to court to be served with a subpoena for the second trial. So at that point, since it was only to be served with a subpoena, she went. I did not go. And at that time, a plea was entered, and that was without consulting me. And that is not the way it should happen. When the victim has an attorney and is permitted to have an attorney under Marcy's law.
Was that the case
Which-
with both of the defendants?
Well, it was with the first defendant, and they knew very well that I would have been there had they said that, but then their reason was, well, it just happened then, but they didn't know it was going to happen then. It didn't have to happen then, is the point. But the real point is that she would have testified at a second trial. I thought she did very well in her testimony at the first trial. It's not her fault that it ended in a mistrial. It ended in a mistrial because apparently the police did not turn over to the district attorney, and therefore the district attorney couldn't turn over to the defense in discovery some information that should have been turned over. So, I mean, the court properly declared a mistrial, but that's not her fault, okay? That's not the victim's fault. And she was willing to go to a second trial. Vivian was not charged with a crime in this because she committed no crime. She's the victim. No one should be beaten up. You could see on the video in the courthouse today that was shown in court at the sentencing. These defendants came after her. She was walking away when she was assaulted. Thank God for the videotapes.
They said something about that it didn't have all the video there, and that police determined that she was the aggressor. What do you have to say about
Yeah,
those?
well, I think,
That's what we're hearing.
I think it's just nonsense. How convenient not to have any video there which would support that argument. But even more to the point, had she been guilty of a crime, they would have charged her, and they didn't. They never even discussed with me that they might charge her, could charge her, would charge her, or were going to charge her, because none of that is supported by anything she did.
What about,
Okay, so, and even if you read the transcript of what I gave you, you will see the court rejecting an argument that somehow the defendants had a right to do what they did to her under the argument that she was somehow a fleeing felon. The court did not buy that argument. It's not supported by the facts. So I think any attacks on the victim at this point need to stop, because it's the perpetrators, two of them, who've entered pleas in this case and who have been sentenced, and they're the ones who are responsible. I'm tired of anyone trying to blame this victim who has suffered so much and been so courageous and just held herself with such dignity throughout all of this. I'm very proud of her. And this is a very serious issue, especially for people who are transgender, to be attacked, to be victims of violence simply because they are transgender. It's wrong.
You looked a little bit confused when the video, looking for a certain part of the video. Did all the video play that you wanted to play this morning?
Well, no, and I think that the district attorney said that he didn't that all was not playing. I don't know. But I recollect seeing certain video where she was really being stomped on quite a bit.
That was not
He
played.
thought, well, he thought he played it in the beginning. He said that he did. I didn't notice it, or maybe it was played quickly.
certainly not
But
trying to make.
and certainly, and you know, the issue of was there any slashing motion by her? I've never seen any video, and I think I've seen it all, where it shows her actually slashing someone. There was movement of her hand. We don't know what they said to her. She recollects something. That's what she said. But again, nothing justifies whatever happened. The vicious, brutal beating which landed her in intensive care and which has caused them to be charged with felonies, the defendants. So,
Are you more upset with Garagos or with the sentencing?
well, both. I'm just very disturbed by Mr. Garagos, a high-profile attorney, who I guess maybe appears to be setting an example for other attorneys to disrespect and demean and denigrate individuals who are transgender. That is going too far in defense of their clients. Nobody should be called a freak, whether they're transgender or not. And I'm not going to engage in similar name calling because I don't think it's appropriate. But to continue to use that term in a court of law on the record before a judge who's admonished him not to do that is not right. There's no, and to call a human being an it. This is Vivian Diego, and she's a she, and her legal name is Vivian Diego. This is not to be tolerated, and that's why I'm calling him out on this. And we've got it on the record. It's not acceptable.
If I could ask Vivian, I know it's not easy for any victim to ever have to come into court and to, you know, in front of a bunch of strangers to relive what happened, but why was it important for you to be here today and to, you know, to share your statement, to kind of, you know, give your story? Why was it important?
It was important to me just because of the simple fact that this kind of stuff happens every day but it's never reported or it's never dealt with. And most of the time, it ends up in somebody losing their life, and here I am still standing. And let me be the voice for those who didn't survive to tell their story. That, you know, our lives aren't disposable. We're still human, and we have feelings.
How were you dealing with the injuries, and what is it like for you? How were you kind of day to day?
I take it one day at a time. You know, emotionally and mentally, that healing process is going to be not ongoing. You know, physically, I think I'm okay physically, but I don't know. It's crazy. I can't believe, like, you know, I wake up in the morning and I just rethink that night, and I'm just like, wow, I'm still here, and I still made it, and I'm still standing.
Now that it's over with, do you feel like this is how you feel now? As in, this has been a long time coming, right? Does it feel like it's all blended together, led up to this day?
Well, I'm thankful that it's finally over, and I don't have to keep on reliving that night, and I can finally move on with my life, like officially move on, and not ever have to turn back on that chapter again. But I'm very thankful to still be here.
Do you remember what happened that night?
I don't. I just remember clocking out of work, and then I wake up in ICU. Yeah.
What do you remember after that?
After the ICU,
Yeah, after waking up.
In
did you kind
ICU,
of recall, did eventually
towards
did
the
your memory
center.
come back about what happened?
I remember when I woke up in ICU, the first thing that came out of my mouth was, "What time is it? Where's my clothes? I gotta go to work." Not knowing what happened was my actual reality. And then when the nurse told me, you know, you ain't going anywhere, how are you even talking right now? Like, you can't have anything to drink because you might swallow your teeth. That's when it all dawned on me, like, so that wasn't a nightmare. It was reality. That's when I'm like, no, like, I was just more so shocked that it actually happened to me. Like, that is, you know, these things happen every day, but it's never reported. And we know these things happen. But when it hits home, it's completely a whole different experience, and it's a whole different ballgame.
What message did you have for the attackers?
I would rather not. I would rather not. But yeah, that would be all for me.
these are some of the photos which we'll put up, taken in the hospital by Vivian, or somebody for Vivian. And then,
You have those just without?
yeah, and I'll put them up, but I just wanted to show you, I know.
That logo?
Yeah, they're different logos. I know. The logos from, oh, yeah, right, we know.
Oh, that's great.
You like that one?
I know you got a CBS one next.
I think I have a CBS one. Okay, and then, yeah. This one has none of them.
Tape is up on the wall.
Okay.
We can put it in the wall.
Yeah, put them on the wall. Thank you for coming. Any other questions? Thank you.